Hey folks, how's everybody doing today? Happy Monday. Whew, it's been quite the week. I apologize. I've been rather ill near the end of the week and still trying to get caught back up here. So I am still behind. My apologies. Definitely this week we'll get caught back up. I'll have everything for you because I know we're not meeting next week for the 4th of July. So before, um, probably by the 5th here, I should have everything in for you. So you'll have all your scores and you should feel ready for the midterm. Want you to have all your quizzes there to review. I know we've got the sample midterm we can go over today, and we're going to talk about arrays and the Arraylist class from Chapter 7 as well. So Project 3, hopefully you got a chance to get started on that one. And that one's not due until the 12th. I wanted to give you that little bit of extra time if you need it. So that's the day of the midterm. Remember, the midterm's going to open about midnight or so in the morning, and then anytime before 11:59 p.m. on July 12th, you can click Start, and you'll have 4 hours to click Submit after you click the Start button for the midterm. So ideally, you get this one done first. It's good practice, again, writing classes and things before you take the midterm, but that way you've got a little bit of flex time if you need it there. All right, let's see. And then, again, we're not meeting next week. Happy 4th of July on Sunday. We'll take the 5th off because I guess that's what we do. The midterm, and then a couple other chapters. We're going to talk about inheritance. We're not going to go super deep into inheritance, but enough to kind of get the gist of how inheritance fits into our core object-oriented programming principles, where we have inheritance, we have encapsulation, we have abstraction, and polymorphism. Sometimes you kind of fit those other two together. It's not too big of a deal. So they all sound like big words. Don't worry. We talked a lot about encapsulation, this idea that my class kind of encapsulates all the details of usually a noun, right? So I have a bunch of private variables with a bunch of public methods that you interact with. That's the abstraction part. You interact with an abstract version of a class, the application programming interface, or its API. You just know there's a bunch of public methods that will do things. You don't need to know the details. You don't need to know how it does it. And we've been doing that with Scanner, right? Nobody has went out and read the actual Scanner class in Java, I'm pretty sure, but we know it does what it's supposed to do, so we can use it. We interact with it abstractly like that. We've done it with random, we've done it with the parsing of doubles and integers and floats and all those sorts of things. We've done it with print writer for creating files. We've done it with the file object for reading files. We've done a lot of things with classes without needing to know their details. We just know this is how we interact with them. All of the private attributes that they have, all of those details that they need to know about themselves, they keep private, and we just have the public methods that do the things they're supposed to do. So we took a whack at writing our own class here for electric vehicle for the project number 3, and we'll keep working on that. And then we'll talk about arrays and array lists today, and that's the core of Java. Chapters 1 through 7 is essentially the core. We start getting the more advanced topics after that, like inheritance and graphical user interface programs. This will be a lot of fun, where you actually have something you can click on instead of typing everything in the console. Because let's be honest, how many programs do you folks use that you have to type at the console for? Probably not very many. There's still good places for them and good utilities and administrative tools, but most programs nowadays you like touch screen or use a mouse to click things. And that's when we'll switch gears and talk about that. I should note the schedule of classes is out, which is super exciting for fall semester. So we have all of our CIS classes. These are the ones I'm curious about, interested in. Hey, Java Virtual Machine. No, I'm not really a big soccer fan. Sorry. I don't really do a lot of sports, like, at all. I used to play football, but I find it terribly boring to watch other people play. That's just me. So the schedule of classes is out, again, mostly in person. There's a couple typical regularly online classes that we do offer, but these are what you'd regularly expect as an online class, asynchronous. I don't think we have any synchronous. Space there. Oh, we have one online synchronous class. Look at that. So this is McAllister. Ms. McAllister will be teaching that one as a synchronous session. That's cool. Synchronous over Zoom. But everything else I think was asynchronous for our online. So I do have a couple online classes, but online... There we go. So 15 or so looks like. It's not too bad. But mostly they're the 1050s, a bunch of 1050s online. That's not even part of our main core program, 1060, 1070, 1200. This is a required course for a lot of folks here. United States Java Virtual Machine. That's a good one. 1300, that's another good core class. Software engineering online, awesome. And system analysis and design, that's another good one. That's Dr. Othman, he's awesome. Problem solving in IT, that must be a different program. Depends what TS means. 2151, oh, that's right, Dr. Ball is offering Java 2 online if you want an online option. Other than that, it'll be an in-person option Monday nights. TypeScript for Java or JavaScript. I've done a little bit with it, but it's not my thing. Don't do a lot of JavaScript myself. Yep, and the rest of our classes here, it looks like they're all in person. So there's a recommended schedule. Kev, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure most everyone is local still, but maybe. And we're working on developing our courses for online here. What is it? Catalog. Is this one it? No, it's not course descriptions. Programs. You can do Java for all sorts of things. Enterprise services and whatnot. Basic applications, anything. Here's ours. So depending on which degree program you're in or certificate program, they have different ones, but I'm particularly looking at software engineering myself. So our program plan example, here's the current example. Although you folks are already taking summer classes, so this whole schedule here is just weird anyway. So they have 2151 is typically the second Java course that you take. Object-oriented programming in Java goes deeper into our object-oriented concepts and picks up some other advanced topics. And then I don't recommend you take it at the same time as data structures. I strongly recommend you take 2151 before data structures. That one's taught in Java, and then having another semester of Java under your belt will be super helpful there. The other advanced language elective classes you can take anytime after you've done intro to, or after you've done 1500. They'll all be easier if you've done a second semester of programming, for sure, because you'll understand more of the concepts. But any of these other ones should be fine after 1500. So you can do a C++, the web systems development I teach, this one here, mobile, taught on Android. We've got that one as well. So those are all a lot of fun. I think you'll pick up Kotlin, which is similar to Java, but a little bit different. We used to do Android programming in Java, and then thanks to the Oracle lawsuit, Google has switched over to Kotlin for their language, which was lots of fun. So, and then, yeah, sprinkle in any of the other 100 level classes as well. So that's the recommended, which is weird. We don't have a summer. This is supposed to change as well, but sure. Again, it takes time to get these things changed, which is super weird. So a lot of the things you learn in 2151 are used in 2353. When you go deeper into inheritance and polymorphism, a lot of that is used in data structures. So you can use it, but if you don't really understand what it's doing, it's really confusing, I find. So, and people take both at the same time, and they're successful, but it's a little confusing if you don't really understand the core, why this all works the way that it does, to understand how you use it in data structures. Yeah, I would have done the schedule differently, but this was before my time, unfortunately. Yep, so I think registration starts in a while, but the list of classes is out here at least, so you can be prepared and start figuring out what you want to enroll for. And I believe they're actually changing this now so that there's priority registration, depending on your status here. So if you have 30 more credits, which is good, you'll be able to pick your classes 7 a.m. Monday, versus students who don't have as many credits are not able to register until the day after. So if you're about halfway done or more, you get first pick at the classes at 7 a.m. So if there's only one section offered, definitely recommend you register early. Okay, so we're trying a phased registration status here, which is pretty cool. Because that way, if you need those classes to graduate, you've got a better chance of getting them. Cool. All right, any other questions about Project 3 before we jump into new stuff here? Again, working on our electric vehicle class and unit tests to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do, particularly around the charge and drive method, because we have some interesting stuff happening there. Testing the constructor that accepts a bunch of values, that's one test, quick, nice and easy. And then we can test all the gets all at once. Yeah, in terms of what framework you use, Java Virtual Machine, a lot of that depends on the organization you hire in with. Different orgs will use different frameworks. That's whatever they've been doing. Yeah, I'll have office hours tonight on Loco. I've got one appointment for 10:30 already, so if you can do 10 or 10:15, we can meet then. Yep. Yeah, I'll have my regular office hours tonight. I was going to take the 5th off, but if, I'm not really going anywhere for the 5th of July. So if you want to meet up for office hours, that's fine, even though it's an official day off. Happy to meet as well on the 5th. We can do that. And then we've got our example midterm from last semester. Remember, it's going to be slightly different because we've gone a little farther here. Right, so we're going to have questions on loops and files, methods, and classes. We'll have 3 programming questions that you'll get. Okay. Yeah, Spring's a great framework. All right, do you want to do the midterm review first, or do you want to do Chapter 7 first? I'm open to either, folks. I gotta turn my fan on here. It's getting warm again. Let me know if that's too loud or not, but I think it's pretty quiet usually in the background. All right, that's 1 vote for midterm first. Unless I see some other votes, we'll go with midterm review first. Oh, one for each now. We need a tiebreaker. All right, that's 2 votes for midterm, 1 vote for Chapter 7. 3, midterm. All right, sorry, midterm looks like that's a clear winner here. So we'll do midterm review first. So hopefully you had a chance to look at these. Right, just watching me solve them is not going to be very interesting if you haven't actually tried them yourself. So let me fire up NetBeans here, pull up the review. Sorry, Process Man and Mr. Ficky. All right, NetBeans. Let's open up this one here. So hopefully these first bunch of questions were relatively familiar, quiz-style questions. We can do these while NetBeans loads. So when you declare a variable, you must assign it a value in the same command. Is that true or false? And if it's false, we have to correct it to make it true. So first we'll go with true or false, and then we can work on correcting the statement if needed. This is the audience participation part. Yeah, false, definitely. You do not have to give it a value. You can say, hey, I'm going to use this string later. I'll give it a value another time with this integer or anything. We just declare it, and later on we can use it. That one is false. So you do not need to assign it a value in the same command. Number 3, a void method will return an int value, true or false? Highlighting is really weird on PDFs. That one is also false. Yes, bonus points for you, Mr. Ficky. So a void method will not return a value. Sure, that's easy. Remember, methods that return values are returning type methods. It would be an int method, essentially. Yep, doesn't return anything for void. All right, an example of an input device. I have my hand on one right now. Look at that. Where's the camera? There it is. A mouse, a keyboard, my laptop itself is a touch screen. That's input, right? Ways that you are giving input to a computer. Yep. Why should we learn to program? Just a generic why. Like, think back to Chapter 1. All sorts of great answers for this one. Money, I'm loco. I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, programs enable us to do all sorts of things more easily. Right? Automation is fantastic. Anything we can automate will save time, money, energy, something, right? lots of things. Nearly every industry in the world now is using some sort of software for something nowadays. I can't think of any industry that wouldn't use software for at least something. No, just anything that makes sense. Any valid answer here. Please don't give me an entire paragraph. This is like a one-liner. Why? Okay. Oh, you guys are already here, but I do want to show you this because this is so cool. I have to show you, right? Yes, the Amish people don't use software. Are they cash only then? Do like Amish furniture sales people only take cash? So that's a thought. So in the couple different degree programs here, they have the program webpage. It kind of describes the program itself and average salary here, or median. I'm sorry, median is not average. Right, so the median salary, so this is of everybody who works in the systems analysis industry here, the middle of the road person earns about $90,000 a year for systems analysis. For cybersecurity, we're looking at a median salary of about $99,000 a year. Pretty good, pretty good. For information technology support, again, median salary here, about 54. These are a lot more like computer support specialists, operation technicians. There's a lot of frontline workers here, but then the higher level people as well. So that's median here. And then our software engineering option, our software engineering program here, again, median salary. So there's some higher, some lower. 105 from 2018. So this is going to be up a little higher thanks to inflation, I'm sure. So of all the CIS options, I think, mine is clearly the best. No, they're all good. We need all sorts of people across the spectrum in information technology, computer information systems. So I just happen to love software engineering myself. Since you mentioned that as a okay, number 6. An if statement doesn't require curly braces if it only has a single line, but it's a good practice to always use them. Oh yeah, DevOps is fantastic. 0. That's the higher end of software engineering for sure. DevOps are the people that write tools for developers to make them more productive. Yes, this is true. Please always use if curly braces. I will always advocate for curly braces. Right? It doesn't hurt anything, and it just makes your code more clear, I think. Right? So yes, always, even though you don't need them. Curly braces, thank you, 0. They make me happy. All right, true or false. A switch statement can always be replaced by if, else if, else if, else if, but not all if else chains can be replaced by a switch. This one's true. Yep. So I can take any switch and replace it with an if else. A bunch of else, else if, else if, else if. Every switch condition could be an if else, right? But if you have a switch, or I'm sorry, if you have an if else, you can't always replace it with a switch, because that if logic can be much more interesting than a switch can handle. You can't do ranges. You can't say if greater than 10 and less than 20 and replace that with a switch. Now you could have case 10, case 11, case 12, case 13, case 14, case 15, on and on and on. Technically, sure, but if your range is like our the tax calculator. You guys did the tax calculator, right? We did the tax calculator. Just imagine doing a range up into the 500,000. You're not going to replace that with a switch. Let's just be honest here. So yes, this is true. Yes, I will have to find the kittens. You got it. I will get them up maybe after break. Have to see where they are. Oh, they're downstairs in their room right now while we had dinner. The kittens are naughty and like to jump on the table while we eat dinner and try and get at our food. Or they just sit there with their adorable kitten eyes and look at you like, please feed me. All right, number 8. With the pipe operator, the entire expression is true only if both sides are true. Remember, pipe is the OR operator. Do you need both sides of an OR to be true for the whole thing to be true? No, that one is false. So with the AND operator, ampersand, the entire expression is true only if both sides are true. Or you could say if either side is true, the whole thing is true with the OR. Either way you can correct it is fine. Right, number 9, a string value passed to a method will be passed by reference. Remember, when we pass an object, we say, here's the memory address of where this thing is. This one's true. I didn't wait for you guys to guess. I'm sorry. You're not guessing at this point, right? You know these. These are just general. We know it. And if you didn't know it, you know how to go find your textbook, open it up to the right page, and then find the answer. Right? I don't expect you to memorize anything. Right? It's open book, open notes, open internet. It is not open neighbor. It is not open Chegg. Okay? We don't post up on Chegg. We don't talk to neighbors. But use your resources. All of these are coming from lecture and my lectures and the text. Right? So you shouldn't have to go find some weird answer on Stack Overflow. Right? If you're familiar with the textbook and you're familiar with the things we've talked about in lecture, you should be able to answer all of them. Okay? Number 10, we typically use ints and doubles types for numeric values. We will typically use ints and doubles for numeric values. That one's true, yep, because floats are annoying because you have to add the F. So F's in the chat for floats. Integers for whole numbers, great, and doubles for anything with a decimal. There are more options. Yes, I know there are more options, but for what we're typically going to do, right, we're good here. Ints and doubles. Life is good. The common convention for naming variables is camel casing, where each word after the first starts with a capital letter. Yeah, that one's true. Right? That's how we name our things. What's the difference between memory, which is RAM, and secondary storage, or disk storage? Remember our RAM here, that's our short-term fast access. So as we store variables, they're stored in RAM. Disk storage, right, is long-term storage that takes longer operations. These are like files that we read and write from. But RAM is temporary. If we lose power, it's gone. Yeah, you can make them doubles, you can make them ints, and either one's perfectly fine. I'm not going to be too concerned if you use ints or doubles. Doubles is probably more proper because you're not going to have exact even kilowatt hours, but again, ints is fine. So RAM is super fast because it's just quick electricity flipping bits. Secondary disk storage takes longer because it needs to go and persist that state. SSD drives are really quick, but still not as fast as RAM. And then I believe there's something about the communication between them, the way that hard drives are connected over the SATA cables or whatever it is. It's a little bit slower. I think you have less bandwidth in terms of reading and writing than you do for the actual RAM chips on your motherboard. Yeah, you could definitely run into testing errors with ints, depending on what you're doing there. So use doubles, that's fine, or if you make it work with ints, I'm cool with that too. Number 13, a string value passed to a method can be modified in the method, and the modification will stay after the method is done. That one is false, yes. Remember, for two reasons. One, strings are immutable. You can't change a string. If you modify it, you're actually making a new string. So the original string value that was passed, which is the reference, right? You pass a reference to a string. You can make a new string, and your variable inside the method can point at the new location. But the string that was passed, the variable that was passed, is still going to point at the old location, which is not changed. Modifications will not stay after the method is done. Cannot be modified. So, technically it can be modified. Even that is really kind of a gray area because you just say, hey, the variable points to a new location. So all false. Badly false here. All right, how can you tell if you should use a for loop or a while loop? Remember, a for loop will run a certain number of times. Technically it doesn't have to. But again, this is should. This is should here. Okay? A for loop is really good if you know how many times you should do something for. Right? Start at a number, go up to this number. It doesn't have to be that. You can put anything you want in the for loop. You can count by 2s. You can count by 10s. You can just say if it's less than some other thing. Right? The increment can be optional even, which is really ugly. But if you know how many times you're going to do something, it's probably a for loop. If you're just going to keep on going, it's a while loop. Right? Until you reach some sort of condition. A do while loop will run one or more times. That one's true, yep. A do loop will run at least one time. A while loop and a for loop are pre-test loops. They're not guaranteed to run, although when you set up the for loop, you're probably going to set it up so that it will run at least once. But it's possible you typoed something and you screwed it up, right? If you flipped your less than and greater than sign, it might never run. And you're going to be really confused, scratching your head like, why didn't my for loop run? Well, because you had the greater than less than sign backwards, right? Same with a while loop, right? You probably mean for it to run, but in terms of like a validation loop, if they gave you good input, then that never has to run, right? Give me an input, and as long as while it's not what I want, while it's not a rock, while it's not a paper, while it's not a scissors, right? Reject it, something like that. The break and continue statements can be very useful, but should generally be avoided if possible. Again, this one's a little bit debatable, but this is the general advice from Mr. Gaddis and myself. I just find them probably more confusing. They're perfectly fine, but because it sort of interrupts the normal flow of how we read code, it's a little bit ugly, a little bit smelly. And if we want our code to be easily read by people, we want to avoid things that are confusing, right? Because the code is for people. Remember, we write code for people to read. If the only thing we cared about was for the computer to read it, we would do it very differently. Very, very differently. Okay, well, write a loop. Okay, so now we get, those are all the short answers. So 15 quiz-style questions, plus agreeing to the academic integrity policy. Open notes, open book, open internet. You may not work on another person. And I'm going to add in here, you may not post anything on Chegg. Right? Any use of Chegg in this course is immediate violation of the academic, is considered academic misconduct. Any use of Chegg. Please just stay away from that site. They are terrible people. I hope they get sued and go out of business. They're awful, awful, awful people. Okay? So for the long answer, so half the test then are these short answer questions. So in terms of pacing yourself, right? If you imagine you have 4 hours for the test, if you take 4 minutes per question for these 15 questions, that's 1 hour done. That leaves you an hour for each of the long answer questions. These, I'm hoping, don't take more than 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. But you've got more time if you need it. Okay? All right, so let me start up a new project here. Close projects. And I'll do a new midterm review. Java application. In my 1500 repo. Midterm review. So the question is, write a loop that prompts the user to enter numeric values until they enter a sentinel value to stop the loop. So we're going to ask them to enter numeric values until they give us a specific sentinel value, which means stop. Okay? I had to reinstall NetBeans, and I think my theme got a little funny here, but I think we're fine here. I think that's all readable. Is that still large enough for you to see, or do you need to change the font a little bit? Looks like I could go up by 1, maybe. Let's go to, say, you can do 24. Why not? Is that better? I think that's a little bit more readable. I can see it now on my other monitor here in OBS, which is kind of a small view of it. So hopefully that's better. Okay, so we need to write a loop. Again, these aren't designed to be hard because I know trying to write code, in like a time-sensitive manner is awful. It's awful, and I apologize for having you do this, but I need to give you something on the midterm here. So they shouldn't be difficult, is the idea here. But just, can you demonstrate that you can do this for me so I can evaluate it, okay? So we're going to write a loop that prompts the user to enter a numeric value until they enter a sentinel value to stop the loop. Stop the loop. Okay, so we'll prompt them. So we'll say enter a number or, I don't know what, -1 to stop. And that can be our sentinel value. Sure. Okay, we can do this in a loop. So we'll have an int for number. I'm going to set it at 0 to start, right? We'll say while number does not equal -1, let's do this thing. Right? We'll keep on looping. So I know it's going to run once because I'm asking them, I've set it to a value that is not -1. You could do a do loop too. Why not? But again, I just hate do loops. I don't like them. So we'll ask them for number, and then we'll change number. We'll say it equals now integer.parseInt of the keyboard.nextLine. Oh, and it says, oh, I don't know what a keyboard is. All right, so we need a scanner keyboard equals a new scanner given system.in. Okay, we'll get the next line, turn it into an integer. If it's not -1, we just keep on going. Right? We don't even have to like total this up or sum it or anything like that. We just enter a bunch of values. Okay. Keyboard. There we go. You still mad at me? Oh, it doesn't know what a scanner is. That's what it is. We have import scanner. Yep, thank you. Okay, that one makes sense. So this is just a little sentinel value using numbers. All right, ask the user to enter the name of a file, create a file with that name, prompt the user 5 times to enter their favorite classes, write them to the file 1 line per class. Okay, sure. So enter the name for a file. String file name equals keyboard.nextLine. Copy paste code from a project? Sure. Yeah, if you've got one already. If you've already submitted it, do cite yourself. That's a weird self-plagiarism is actually a thing. I had to fail somebody one time because they turned in a paper that they had written for a different class, which is a violation of our academic integrity policy. Right? You're not allowed to reuse the same work without permission. If they would have asked, I might have even been okay with it, but they didn't ask me, which unfortunately was a violation of the policy. Yeah, you probably already have a loop, right? That does something. Enter the name for a file, get the name, right? And remember, you have a couple ways of doing this. We can just use PrintWriter, which is nice and easy. That's the quick way. Yeah, for that question. So you're not going to get this same question, though. Sorry. This is just a sample question. You'll get a question similar to this, where you have to do something with files and do something with it. Yep. But yeah, sure. If you want to, here's how I create a file. Go for it. Copy paste it. All right. I'm going to use PrintWriter because that's easiest. PrintWriter, file writer. Sure, why not? Equals a new PrintWriter. You know what? That's okay. Output file. How about that? Because file writer is another thing, so maybe we don't want to use that. And you just give it the file name. Right? You could add txt if you wanted to, right? To add that extension so we can open it nicely. And then yeah, we're going to add our throw clause here, right? So it says, hey, a bad thing might happen, just crash. And here's our import here for PrintWriter and for file not found exception. Sure, we'll make the output file, and then it says prompt them 5 times, right? Let me see if I can copy that. That's close. That's close. Okay. Whoa. Prompt the user, enter the name of the file, create a file with that name, prompt the user 5 times to enter their favorite class. So if we're going to do something 5 times, probably a for loop. It doesn't have to be, but this is easier, right? So we'll say for int class number 0, class number is less than 5, class number plus plus. Okay, and then we'll say for the name of one of your favorite classes, and we'll get their input. So we'll have, well, here's a string for class name is keyboard.nextLine. And then we need to write it. So we use output file.println given the class name. You can either add it to a repository if you want, or you can just copy paste it into the text boxes. I'm fine with either. These are typically small enough that you can just copy paste. And then most people prefer to copy paste just so they can see it all there, but you know, either way is fine. Okay, then when we're done, make sure you do close the file. Put file.close. When you open the file, you read or write from it, and then you close it. You always want to close it when you're done. Okay? This convert to try thing is really cool. Don't don't worry about it. We haven't really talked about it yet. It's the nicer way to make sure you don't forget to close it, which is cool. But again, we haven't really got there. All right, we'll talk about that next in 2151. Okay, so it writes them one file or one line per class. So if you use print line here, you're automatically going to get the new lines. If you just use print or write, remember, you're not going to get the new lines automatically. So you'd lose like 1 point for that if you weren't doing the new lines here. One line per class. Okay? And the last one here, write a method Simon says that prompts you to enter the command, ensures the command starts with Simon says, use a validation loop, and then returns the string command. Look at this, I'm smart now, I can use a comment block instead of having to comment all of them. Okay, and probably tab those in one, sure, why not? Okay, so we're going to write a method. Oh, so that needs to be a method then, right? So we'll actually go out here. So public, if it's going to return a string, it's a string type here. Simon says. It doesn't need any arguments, right? It's just, here's a method. Has to use it to enter a command. So enter a Simon says command. And then we'll get their input. Right, so we'll have a probably a string for command. Command, does it have two ends? I'm going to start it off as empty, and I'm going to say while command.equals, oh, not even equals, we can't even use equals here. We can say dot starts with. Remember, there's all sorts of cool things we can do with strings, so starts with is one of them. Starts with Simon says, that's probably a lowercase, right? And while it does not start with Simon says, so empty does not start with Simon says for sure here. So we'll get the command. So we're going to need the keyboard scanner thing again. So scanner keyboard, the new scanner, given system.in. We'll have our command equals keyboard.nextLine. Okay, if it doesn't start with Simon says, it's going to keep prompting us again. As soon as we're done with this loop, it does start with Simon says, because this is true, and not true would be false, and as soon as it's false, the loop stops. We can return the command. Does that part make sense? All right, so we're going to ask him to enter a command, ensure it starts with Simon says. We use a validation loop, return the string commands. This is our validation loop. If it does not start with Simon says, ask him again. We did it wrong. And then we'll even call it Simon says. Oh, let's just we'll output here Simon says. Remember, it's going to return a string, so we can just output whatever that string result is here. Oops, it's going to be static. Public static string Simon says. There we go. Because we just want to use it here for main. Remember, anything in main, you can only call static things. It is not a class. Okay? So let's try it. So let's run our program and see if it works. Right? You have NetBeans. Please test your code before you turn it in. Make sure it runs. Uh-oh. There are errors. What are my errors? Tasks? Nope. Window. Close the tasks window. Action items. Cannot find symbol. Identifier expected? I confused it. Line 46. Huh. Alright, it ran as soon as I put another space there. Yeah, 0. No worries. We're doing the sample midterm questions here. All right, so we'll enter a number. If it's not a -1, it should just keep on going. -1 should make it stop. Okay, enter the name for file. Test file. Just give it something. Make sure they all show up on their own line. Enter Simon command. Stop. Simon says stop. Oh, well, it needs to be capital S, right? Simon says stop. And it works. So remember, just outputted our command here right away. And we should have a file here. If we go to Files and check out Midterm Review, we should have a test file. It should have 1 line per class. Again, there's not class names, so that's fine. We asked them for that, and I just didn't do it. So it took my input and wrote it 1 per line to the file. My loop kept on running as long as I didn't give it a -1. So I feel pretty good here. I got full points on the midterm. How you folks feeling? Yeah, well, so I didn't add the .txt extension, but remember, if you're using PrintWriter, it's just writing it is a text file. So it's not they're either text files or binary files, and we've only done text files. So even whether or not it says .txt, it is a text file. It just Windows won't know to open it. Yeah, exact same number of questions, Mr. Picky. Yep, 15 quiz style questions for 15 points, and then 3 long answer style questions at 5 points each. So half the points come from these long answer questions, half the points come from the quiz style questions. Sure. Yeah, I mean, or just so like what I would do is I would just copy paste. I would say for that question, I would just grab all this and copy that into the text box in D2L. Yeah, if you want to commit it to a repository and give me a link, you can do that too. That's probably more trouble than it's worth, though. Just more headache for you folks. If you're more comfortable with it, go for it. That's fine too. But the text boxes are nice and big. You can paste in anything you want. It can just take your code. Yep. Yeah, if you just want to grab everything, like grab the whole thing, that's fine too. That's fine. I can probably figure it out as long as you give me enough. Right? I don't need these import lines. Like, don't feel like you have to add the import lines and add this other. Like, just give me the code that matters here. Like, this would be enough here. And even if you forget scanner, like if you just give me this part, I'd be fine because I would assume that it was there. And you can always watch the VOD, Zero. Don't worry. And I'll post all the code out here on GitHub. So, and I think I told you folks, let's see. I think I did that, right? Midterm review. Yes. Timed 4-hour D2L quiz. Start at any time on 7/12. You have 4 hours to click submit after you click start. Okay? So our long answer questions, right? Loops and files. So we're not going to have a loop question because it's like this file question also uses loops. So we'll have a loops and file question. We'll have a method question where you write a method for something, and then we'll have a class question. We're going to ask you to write a class, just a simple class, okay? So let me put that in here as well. So the long answer questions will be one on loops and files, one on methods, one on classes. So I'll say, hey, write a class with these attributes and these methods. So that one, I'm expecting it to take about 20 minutes or so, but if you take 4 minutes per question on the short answer, and then you get 1 hour per long answer question. The goal is that is plenty of time, right? You should be able to finish it in 2 hours or less is what I'm aiming for. But I want to make sure you've got the time. And then if you have connected with the Access Office and need additional accommodations, please let me know. Okay, remember, those are not automatic. Okay? So that's out there. Here's our midterm review. We publish that to GitHub. Maybe. There it goes. 100. Term review. All right, awesome. Yeah, and again, please run the stuff. Right? You've got NetBeans. Test your code. Make sure it works. You don't have to write the unit tests. That's okay. I won't ask for those. I know we're still kind of figuring those ones out. We haven't really had a project to finish those and figure those all out yet. You're still working on them for Project 3. But run your code, make sure it works. Does it do the thing it's supposed to do? 100% code coverage? What are you talking about? Is that for project 3, you mean? They'll be similar to the quiz questions, yeah. Yep, so 100% code coverage means that every line of code is run when the test runs. So if we open up our project 6, or chapter 6, recent projects. There's chapter 6 here. So you can never guarantee there are no bugs, 0, right? Because it's possible we screwed it up. But with our student class here, right, we have, if you don't have the average being greater than 94, this line of code will never run. So unless there's a test that generates an average of above 90 or at or above 94, you will not have 100% code coverage because this line will never have run. So what 100% code coverage means is that every line of code is exercised and run during one of the tests. So every if block is run, right? So you have a test to make sure every if block runs or every else block runs, right? Whatever else we have here. So with our ensure scores between, right? We want to make sure that we get 100 if it's more than 100. We want to make sure we get 0 if it's less than 0. We want to make sure we get the actual score if it's that. So in the tests here, I have a bunch of tests here. I have a test for A, test for A minus, test for B plus, test for B, because I wanted to get 100% code coverage. So when you're looking at your methods here, right, electric vehicle, your charge method should have 2 different things that happens. You should make sure it's not negative, right? If it's not negative, great, then we want to add it to the current kilowatt hours in battery. We also want to ensure it doesn't go over the max. So we can test a couple things. We can test, hey, if I give it negative, does nothing happen? If I give it a regular value, does it actually charge the normal amount? And if I give it over the maximum, am I stopping at the max for how much I'm charging? Yeah, so I mean, if you have a code block that is checking to make sure the value is not negative, if that if never happens, you don't have 100% code coverage. So that's that idea of 100% code coverage, is that every block, every line of code is run at some point in your testing. So you need those different tests for it here. Right, for drive, right, this is going to return a Boolean of if they were able to drive it or not. We're going to subtract the number of kilowatt hours to drive the distance and make sure kilowatt hours does not become negative. Right, you return a false if they're trying to drive more kilometers than they have battery for. And then you want to obviously stop at 0, right? They've used all of the battery, they got as far as they got, and we tell them false. Return a false. Otherwise, we return true, and they just subtract the correct number of kilowatt hours. Remember, this is just simple arithmetic. We know how many kilometers per kilowatt hour we can drive. So if you tell me how many kilometers I need to drive, I can figure out how many kilowatt hours that's going to require and subtract that from my current kilowatt hours in battery. Are there 2 T's in kilowatt? Oh my goodness. Did I mess kilowatt up everywhere? Kilowatt. Let's I can't find a replacement here, can I? Kilowatt. Okay. Kilowatt. 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 I should have known because that one was highlighted. This is all right. I am happy to typo things because it happens all the time. Does that look better? Spyro the Dragon, you get like 50 bonus points there for correcting my English, my spelling. Unfortunately, the bonus points are not worth anything. Sorry. Okay, any other thoughts, questions about this one? They're what, motivation points? What do we call them? Feel good points? There's some word for it. They're not actually worth anything. That Crash Bandicoot? I feel like I played both at one point, but it's probably been a while. All right. We feeling all right? We did the midterm review. We talked about Project 3. Again, we've got time on this one. I'd like you to finish this before the midterm, but I want to give you a little extra time if you need it, because I know you have to study for the midterm in between. because this will make sure you've had some practice to write a class before you have to write a class for the midterm. I'll give you something very similar, like write a class, include methods. Maybe one here that has something interesting happening, but not a whole lot. And then I won't ask for any testing at all. It'll probably just be boring. It'll probably just be write a class. Here's a bunch of attributes. Not even sure. I might have one interesting method. We'll see. So I know this might take a little while. I want it to be relatively short. Here, so let's do it. Let's do a practice one real quick before we go for break. Let's do that. So I'll do one more here. So we're gonna write a class. How about we do animal that has a name and a sound? We'll do that. So this is animal. So this is write a class animal that has attributes for name and sound. Have a method make sound that returns the sound the animal makes. Include set and get methods for name and sound. And sure, let's have a constructor. A constructor that accepts values for name and sound. Okay, so the constructor will take a name and sound as arguments. That's what by accept values, like it has arguments for or has parameters for. We'll have set and get methods for name and sound. We'll have a make sound method. I know there's a get sound, but we'll also have like make sound just for fun that returns the sound the animal makes with attributes here. So we're going to have a private string for name and a private string for sound. Then we'll write our constructor. So public. Remember, constructors don't have a return type. They're neither void nor return types. They just they have the name of the class. Then it has to accept a name and a string for sound. Okay, it'll set this name to the name. Remember, because they have the same name, this is my instance attribute name. Name here is the argument name. And this.sound is sound. Notice these ones show up in orange for me to let you know, hey, these are the argument oranges, and these ones show up in green for me because they are the attribute ones. And then we'll have a public void set sound that accepts a string for sound. This sound equals sound. And then a public string get sound that doesn't take any arguments and it just returns sound. So here in this case, I don't need a this dot because I don't have an attribute or a parameter here, argument here, sorry, that has the same name as my attribute. Notice they show up in green here, so you kind of match the green to the green. This is why the IDE colors are so nice. And we'll do the same for get name and set name. We'll have a public void set name, given a string for name, takes this name, sets it to name, and a public string get name that just returns the name. Now, if you want to get fancy, and things I've said before, if you have the same code twice, you should feel bad about yourself. I have this exact same line here twice. What you could do then is instead of calling this here, we just say set name, name. And set sound, sound. Okay? We can set the name, we can set the sound that way. And we also need then the method for make sound. Okay, sure, so we'll add a make sound. So public string make sound. You know what? That's fine. It just returns the sound. We'll just return sound. Sure, we make the sound. We'll return a sound. Oh, here we go. Returns the name of the animal and the sound the animal makes. I like that even better. So like we'll say, hey, like name plus. So like if your name was Sparky and your sound was bark, it would say Sparky barks. Or Sparky bark. Sure. That make sense? So something like this is essentially what you'll see. I'll ask you to write a quick little class with maybe one interesting method. I mean, and interesting in that it's not a set or a get method. Okay, and I'll add that one too. So class question review. Okay, I think we're good for a break then. It's about 7 o'clock. When we take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and we can pick up Chapter 7 and talk about arrays and array lists. And then we'll call it a night. All right, we'll come back at 7:10. See you in a little bit. Hey, welcome on back. I remember to find my little kitties. Merlin, say hi. Say meow. Hi. Show me your extra paw. He's got 6 paws, 6 claws here. He's so awesome on his little toes. And Moxie's back here somewhere. Oh, she's already in the chair behind me. So, alrighty. Awesome. Kitties, I know, they're awesome. So fun. Alright, so we start up a new project. We're going to do Chapter 7 tonight. Chapter 7 is Arrays. My old man cat's sleeping somewhere. He's 14 now. He sleeps a lot, but he's still really cute. He's somewhere. I found the kittens. There you go, Merlin. He's just chilling in my lap now. So they are 4.5 months old now. Right? They're born on Valentine's Day? Yeah, 4.5 months old. Not too bad for a little kitty. Alright. So arrays are the next tool we get in our toolkit. So if, like before with student, if we had to have a bunch of scores here, we had to have a Project 1 grade, a Project 2 grade, a Project 3 grade. If I wanted to have like 10 projects or 10 homeworks or something, having 10 attributes would be a little bit annoying, right? I have 10 different ones and have to manage all of those. So what an array lets us do, and this is a common problem we have, is an array lets you store essentially multiple values in a single variable. So we might have an int, this is my scores, and you use square braces. Those are the not shifted curly braces. We'll say int scores equals, and now we have to give it some special syntax. We say new int, and then in the square braces, we need to tell it how many integers we want. So I'll say 10. So int scores, square braces, means it's an array. Technically, you can put them over here. Say int array scores. Either is perfectly fine. It's probably more preferred to put them here at scores, just because, remember how you can declare multiple values all at once? Right, you can say int scores is 10, you would say quizzes, array, and final. Not final, midterm. How about that? So the only reason it's preferred to be after is to be explicit here. And now it's a little bit confused because midterm is technically a single integer here. So you can say midterm equals 100. Because, hey, this is an int type, and then you can have a single integer. I find this terribly confusing and awful. So, I don't know, maybe just do int array scores, and that's fine too. Either one's going to be okay. Whatever's going to make more sense to you. So, if you say int array, and then you have scores and quizzes, and then midterm, midterm is an array, not a single int. So, yeah. I don't know. Int array scores is probably... I hate doing multiple variables on a single line anyway, so we'll just say int array scores. Either one's fine. Okay? Now what we're going to do is I need a way to set each individual value here. And what happens with an array, and this is actually a really cool thing that happens, is behind the scenes, when you tell Java, right, the Java virtual machine, right, that's our JVM, talks to the operating system, right? Our code is read by the Java virtual machine, which talks to the operating system. So when your code says it wants an array of integers, size 10. Okay, the Java virtual machine says, hey, operating system, I need a memory location, give me memory, for 10 integers. And it gets it all in one big block. So remember, each integer is 4 bytes. You probably don't remember that, and that's okay. It's not worth your memory space. You can always go Google it. Okay, but what the operating system then will give you back is it gives you back 40 bytes of memory, starting at, say, like x329f. I don't know. Make up a number. Doesn't matter. So now I have 40 bytes of memory starting at this location. So my int scores stores this value, 329f. So arrays, while they look like they're primitive, essentially are references. An array is a reference. So the int scores array, right? So int array scores equals a new int. I'm writing things backwards, sorry. New int size 10. All of this stuff happens, and then scores, then, the value of scores is x329f. Okay, so scores is a memory address, just like a reference type, right? It says, this is where this thing is in memory. Okay? Then what we get to do, so a lot of times we kind of visualize arrays as like a horizontal bar. We'll say, here's an int, 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 here's an int. That should be 10. Okay? Now, here's the thing that trips up a lot of people, and it's going to take you a little while to get used to, and that's okay. The first item here is not at position 1. We refer to these as indexes. So there's an index in your array. So each of these is at an index. So the index is the location in that block of memory where your value is. The first one is 0. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, and 9. I'm just going to erase that 8. That was terrible. 8 and 9. So you have indexes from 0 up to, but not including the length. So we get from 0 up to, but not including the length. Length, right, of our array. Okay, so the first position is always 0. Now the reason behind that, and don't worry if it doesn't stick or doesn't make a lot of sense, it's okay, but for some people this really helps them, is to get at any given position in an array. So throw out an index between 0 and 9. Any one, it doesn't matter, between 0 and 9. Just somebody type a number in chat between 0 and 9. Four. Okay, so to get at 4, we'd say scores index of, with square braces, 4. That's our notation. So 4. So what Java does when you say, hey, you want scores index of 4, it takes x329f times 4 times the size of an int. So it starts at this address, and we know an integer is size 4. So this, sorry, not times, plus is important here. So it's going to do x329f plus 16 bytes, right? Which is really 16. Remember, is 10 in binary. It doesn't matter. That's okay. So it says as x32 AF. Remember, after 9, you get A again. A, B, C, D, E, F for 0 through 15, 10 through 15. So this memory address then is scores index of 4. So it does some quick arithmetic. It says, okay, the size of an integer times the index. This is index here. So at index 4, it's 4 times the size of an integer. This memory address is where this index 4 is in memory. I can either set it to be something, right? I can give it a value like 27, or I could go get that value, right? If I wanted to like print s out scores index of 4, or take that value, multiply by something, anything I want. So that is where you would find it at memory. So the reason why we're 0-based is because if you ask for index 0, it's the first index. It's right there. Because 0 times, if you ask for index 0, 0 times the size of anything is still 0. So we're 0-based because that's the start of the array. Okay. The funny thing about arrays is that they are fixed in size. You cannot add to them or take away from them. So once I make it size 10, it's stuck. Okay. But what I could say is I can make this a little bit more interesting. I could have a scanner keyboard equals a new scanner given system.in. And then I could say, how many do you have to enter? And then I'll get an integer for number of scores equals integer.parseInt of keyboard.nextLine. Then I can take this number of scores and I can make my array that big. So you tell me how many scores you have, I'll make an array of that size. Sure, and then I can say for int index. So a lot of people, even Mr. Gaddis, like to use I here. I personally hate I here. Just it's one of my weird things. You can type index because it means index. They say I for index. But if you know what it means, just type it, right? You're not sure you saved like 2 letters. You saved 4 letters, fine. But you know, the computer types for you. So we always start at 0. Say index is less than. Now arrays have this length property. So scores dot length is the length of scores. So anytime you're going to loop through an array, you always want to start at 0 and go up to, but not including the length. Okay, scores plus plus. And yes, I will import scanner. There we go. Why is this upset with me now? Oh, shoot. Not scores. Index. Sorry. Index plus plus. Well, that red line is terrible, and it does not like a line. So I'm going to loop then for as many scores as you told me. I'm going to loop starting at 0, which is index 0, up to the length, index plus plus. I'll say enter the score for, or what? Score number. How about enter score number plus index there. Right, I want to add the index there. Score number 0, score number 1, score number 2. What would you call the variable in a nested loop? So if you had I, and then you had a loop inside of that, a lot of people use J, and that's why I hate it. So they'll do a loop. They'll say like for int I is 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, and then they'll say for int J is 0, J is less than I, J plus plus, and then they'll say like print a star here, sure, and then when that one's done, then we'll just print out another line. So this loop would work perfectly fine. I's and J's. 0. And it, you know, prints a nice little pretty triangle here, but I's and J's are terrible, right? This would be, so I would say here for row is less than 10, row plus plus. And then this is, I don't know, star. Star is less than row, star plus plus. Right? Use something that's meaningful, right? That's so much better here. Better than I's and J's. And then if you're doing I's and J's, like if you have an I and a J in the same row, like if you have you know, scores of I times scores of J or something like that, and you wanted to do some sort of arithmetic, like I can barely tell the difference between an I and a J. Right? Why? I mean, why? Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, but it's just horrible. Right? Why use I and J? I'm sorry, we don't even have an I and a J here because I changed it here. But yeah, so I'm not a fan of I's and J's. That's just me. Okay. So we'll say enter the score number, score number 0, score number 1, score number 2, score number 3, on and on and on. And then we're done. We'll print out our array. Print out scores. So I want to enter 5 scores. Oops, I didn't actually prompt for anything. Oops. So scores at index. Or index of. Scores index of index. Okay, so the score braces here mean index of or at, essentially, equals integer.parseInt of keyboard.nextLine. Okay. So if we enter 5 scores, how about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50? Ugh. The output's terrible though, right? And it even tells you, hey, you did a silly thing. You can use arrays.toString to print it out. So arrays.toString. So there's this arrays class, a method called toString, like integer.parseInt. There's an arrays class with a toString method here. So we'll add 5 scores. Let's do 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. And now I get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. Okay? So this is how we loop through arrays, right? Always starting at 0, less than their length. Or if you want to go to the other end, if you want to start at the end, you start at length minus 1, up to including 0. So depending which direction you want to go. So an array just lets you store multiple values of the same type. So all these values stored here are integers. Right? They all have to be the same type. But I get to store as many of them as I want as an array. So if we have this array here, then how about for fun, let's try and find the highest score. Okay, so we'll have an int for highest score. Now, if I were to ask you to look at a list of numbers and find the highest one, right, how would you do that in English? So if I give you, so just shout out 5 different numbers to me, and I'll put them in a list here. Right? We'll pretend we have an array here, and I'll put 5 values in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So give me 5 numbers. $13, 45, 63, 12, 86. All right. So let's see, how do we find the highest number? And remember, you need to do this in a way that is easy enough, step by step by step, for a computer to do it. You can't just say, look at all of them and see which one's biggest. The computer doesn't know how to look at all of them and see which one's biggest. So what do we do? What is the process that we do? What's our algorithm, if you want to use your fancy technical terms? What's our algorithm for finding the largest number? Is 13 the largest number? Sure, 13 is the largest number because I have only ever seen 13. So largest is 13. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Which one's bigger, 13 or 45? 45 is bigger, so now 45 is the biggest number. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Which one's bigger, 45 or 63? All right, we have a new biggest number. Largest is 63. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Which one's bigger, 63 or 12? The biggest stays the same. It's still the largest. Sure. All right, now let's look at 86. Which one's bigger, 63 or 86? Well, it's 86. 86 is the largest number. Yeah, so we assume the first one is the largest until we know otherwise, and we compare it one by one by one. So we're going to loop. So we'll say the int highest score is equal to scores at 0, or index of 0, the first one here. Right, so we're going to assume the first number is the largest, so we know otherwise. Okay, then we're going to loop. We'll say for int index is 0. I'm sorry, we want to start at 1. We could start at 0, but we already know that 0 is our highest score, so it doesn't matter. So starting at 1, as long as index is less than scores.length, index plus plus. Let's see, which one is bigger? If scores at index is larger than my highest score, I have a new biggest highest score. The new highest score is scores at index. That's it. And when we're done, we can print the highest score is highest score. Okay, so assume the first one's the largest until we know otherwise. Right? We loop through, so we're going to check the rest of the values. So check the rest of the array. See if you find anything bigger. Right? If we find something bigger, we have a new bigger number. We could do the exact same thing for smallest. Right? We'll say int smallest score, or lowest score, right? Lowest. Score. Again, starts at scores of 0. That's the first score until we know otherwise. Right? And then we'll say for int index is 1. Index is less than scores.length. Index plus plus. Now, if my scores at index is less than the lowest score, then my lowest score is that scores at index. Hey, thanks so much for following, my friend. Good to have you along. The Chief Dingus, Mr. Reluctant Hermit. Thanks for coming to class. So the lowest then, if it's lower than the lowest, current lowest, is now the new current lowest, until we know otherwise. And we're done. The lowest score is lowest score. I have to give you a shout out here, my friend. See if I can type your name right here, though. Or does copy paste work? Look at that, it works. All right, yeah, have fun in your class. I appreciate it. Oh, anytime. If you folks haven't checked out our friend, the Reluctant Hermit, he has some amazing content. Super fun guy. I mean, Twitch is not just for education. You might think Twitch is just an educational platform, but believe it or not, people play games, and some people watch them play games live on Twitch. You probably never knew that before, but you know, there's this whole platform for it. All right. So the lowest score, right? How about finding the average score? Think we can find the average? Remember, how do you find the average here? So again, we'll try it in English. How do we find the average? I know you didn't have to have a lot of math here, but you needed like some bit of math here. How do we find an average? Zuza, the casual. It doesn't sound real. I know. People watching people play games? I don't know. I don't know. I heard someone was like really weird and against it. Like, why would you bother watching someone play a game? And then they just looked at them all funny and they're like, have you heard of football or hockey or basketball or baseball? And they're like, but it's a video game. I'm like, does it matter? No, it's still people playing a game, and we'd like to watch that. Yeah, add them all together, divide by the number of entries. Perfect. So, if we're going to add them all together, we need a place to add them. So, I have an int for total. Starts at 0. Or int. Now, I'm going to show you a cool thing here. So, when you're looping through an array, turns out this is annoying to type, right? You might believe it, that a programmer who decided this was too much to type every time thought, hey, there must be a lazy way to do this. And there is. So, we'll say now, what you do, this is an enhanced for loop or a read-only for loop. We'll say for int score colon scores. This means for every integer I'm going to call score in scores. Of course, I mean, you got to watch the good people play. Most of the time, I don't have time to play the games anyway, so that's like my only experience with the game is watching people play. Which has been a lot of fun. There's some really cool games I've seen people play. This is an enhanced for loop. Enhanced for loop or a read-only loop. So we're going to say this is the type, and then our variable name for it. In is the colon operator here for some reason, the scores array. I'm going to say total plus equals score. That's it. Okay. Now when I'm done, remember, if we get integer division, we're going to lose our decimal place. So maybe I actually want this to be a double, just so that I'm actually going to get a correct answer when I divide by the length. Okay? We'll say the average score is, and now I'm going to do some arithmetic. Right? I'm going to take my total divided by scores.length. Now, scores.length is an integer. That's why I made total a double. So I got a double result. Remember, if you have an integer divided by an integer, you'll get an integer result, and you're going to lose any decimal place. So, you know what? Let's do this even better. Let's do this. We'll say double average is equal to this thing here. That's even prettier, right? And then I can just say average. That's a little nicer here, right? Average. There we go. Okay? So this little for loop here, it's a read only. So if I were to try and change score, it would not change the score in the scores array. That's why it's called a read-only loop. You can't change the value and have it stay changed in the list. You're essentially getting a copy every time of primitive types, right? So for strings and integers, perfectly fine. If you have an array of classes, you can do some other fun stuff, but we'll get to that later. Okay? So we can calculate an average. So let's give it a run. Uh-oh, I had an error. What's my error? Oh, I spelled length wrong. Scores.length. There we go. TH. Now let's see if we can run it. All right, so we had some scores then, right? We had 5 scores. We had 13, 45, 63, 12, and 86. Right, 13, 45, 63, 12, 86. The highest is 86, the lowest is 12, the average is 43.8. You know what? Let's just check Java here. Let's make sure, right? Because I don't know if that's actually the average or not. 13 plus 45 plus 63 plus 12 plus 86 divided by 5, 43.8. Look at that. Java did math, folks. I know you're impressed. Java did some math. All right, are we okay so far? Now what's fun is that if we wanted to do this again, I don't want to have to redo any of this work, right? If I have another array, so what I can do instead is I can make some methods. So I can have a public static int, I don't know what, find highest. And I can say an int array for scores. Or I don't know, even like values. Oh, Merlin, you're falling down. Don't scratch me. Don't fall. Don't fall, baby. He's like just slowly sliding off my lap, digging his claws into my legs. We'll call this values. We're going to do this exact same thing here. We'll say int highest is equal to values index of 0. Now this method has no idea how big values is. It could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 1,000, it could be maybe 1,000,000. I don't actually know what the largest array size is. Java max array size. 2 to the 31 minus 1. Okay, yeah, that's huge. Right, that's the 2 billion some odd number here. Right, that's the largest integer. So you can have up to 2 billion items, which is a lot of items here. That's going to take up a lot of memory, right? At 4 bytes each, I mean, it's still not a ton, but 2 billion, right? Kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes. So that's going to take like 8 gigabytes of memory here to hold that many integers. We're probably going to get this out of memory exception. Out of memory, OOM exception. Okay, anyway, so our highest starts at 0. And then for index is 0 or index is 1, index is less than values.length, index plus plus. If my values at index is greater than my highest is values at index. When we're done, we're going to return highest. We're going to do the same thing for lowest. Find lowest. I'm going to call highest and we call it lowest here. Boop, 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 boop. And just flip the greater than less than. If it's less than lowest, it's the new lowest. Okay, we'll find an average. So I guess this is a little bit different. That's fine. So a double total, 0 for int value colon in values here. Total plus equals the value. Oh, this should return a double here, right? Because we want a double type. And we can return total divided by values.length. Right? You don't even need to like save off average here. You can just return some arithmetic. Isn't that crazy? Maybe that's a little bit ugly, so maybe we want to calculate a double average equals this first. But totally optional. Right? Totally up to you. Okay? Double average returns that. Oh, it's average. Find average. There we go. Semicolon, thank you. And those red lines really pop out. Holy cow. So you can pass arrays as an argument. Now, because an array is a reference, you can change it. So you do want to be careful. If you pass someone an array, they can go change the values on you. Because they'll say, hey, values at an index equals a new value. What they can't do is say, hey, values equals a brand new array. Right? Same problem we have with strings. Right? If I say, here's my scores array, and it's at x3297, 329f. In your method, if you have some method like find largest, so this is now the values. So values is equal to this number here, that location. If you go change it and make a new array, and you say values, you now point over here at x39 FB, right? You're not going to change the original anymore. You have changed where your values points, but not where the values argument was points. So my scores is still pointed right here. You now have said values is over here when you were trying to assign to it. But because you have this reference here at 329F, you can take one of these individual indexes and change it. You can say, hey, instead of a 7 over here, you're now a 23. Because you can change individual values inside of the array if you have the reference. So you gotta be a little bit careful because arrays are passed by reference. Okay, so we can do all those same things here. Then we don't need to do any of this extra work. We'll just do it again here. Out highest, find highest. Oops, find highest. Given scores, lowest plus find lowest, given scores, and average of scores. Okay, just make sure we get the same numbers back out, right? 5 numbers. What do we have here? We had, oops, 13, 45, 63, 13, 45, 63, 12, and 86. There we go. And let's see, do we get the same numbers back out? 86, 86, 12, 12, 43.8, 43.8. Look at that. We have the same code twice. But now if I have another scores list, right, I can use the same highest, min, max, whatever you want to call it. This might be max, this might be min, find highest, find lowest, find average, or calculate average maybe. I don't know. You can call them anything you want. The names don't matter too much. Okay, that's working with that array. We're at so far? I know it's a whole other concept here. So we could change our student class then. Instead of having a single integer for each grade, we could just have an array of grades. Now that could be a little bit funnier. You'd have to pass an array of grades. Sure, we could do that. Perfectly fine. For overall grade, again, total would be a little bit different. We could do the quick little loop to total it. Perfectly fine. We could do all that. We all right so far? Now, one of the big problems here is that once an array is sized, once you tell it, hey, you hold this many values, you can't change it. You can't add to it, you can't subtract from it. You'd have to make a new array and copy the values over. And copying is not so bad, right? Making a copy of an array, it's not terrible. If you wanted to, we could do that. We could even write a method for it here. So we'll write a public int array method called copy array that takes an int array values. So if we want to make a copy of values, we need to make a new array. So we'll have an int array new values equals a new int array size of, well, how big should it be? Well, it should be the size of values.length. And then I would say for int index is 0, index is less than values.length, index plus plus. And I'm going to say new values at index is equal to values at index. And I'm going to return new values. Yeah, you could, there's a array copy method. Look at that. It's even NetBeans knows that we're making a copy. How smart is NetBeans? Man, the people who write IDEs are like my heroes because they're just amazing. They know we're lazy and they want to give me tools to make it faster. Merlin, what are you doing, buddy? Do you want to say hi again? Say hi. Say I'm a naughty cat. Hi. No, he's actually a really good boy. He's a pretty good boy. He just keeps scratching me. Okay, so this is making a copy. Because we're going to take each value out of values and put it into new values, and we'll give you back new values. So this makes a new array in memory, right? What we can't do is I can't say int array copy of values or copy of scores equals scores. Technically, you can do this, right? But it's really bad form. Because what happens then if I say copy of scores at index, I don't know, let's say 0 equals, let's give you like 105 here. And then let's see what happens to scores. So if we enter 5 scores, what do we have? 13, 45, 63, 12, 86. All of a sudden now, highest is 105. Well, I didn't change scores, I changed copy of scores. What we've done is we said, hey, this is where scores is, right? This is scores. And my new scores, when I said you equal scores, you get this value. Remember, an array is a reference. It stores the reference. So when I say you equal scores, oh, you equal this reference here. You have the same address in memory. If you have two variables pointed to the same location in memory, you don't have a copy. You have two things pointed at the same thing. Two variables pointed at the same object. That's not a copy. So what I need then, I would need a array copy. Or what do I call it? Copy array? Copy array. It has to be static. Public static int. I need it to be copy array of scores. Now I can change my copy of scores, and it'll be perfectly fine. 5 scores, 13, 45, 62, 12, 86. Now it doesn't change my highest, because copy is a new value. So what that did is it made a new array out of memory. That, hey, you don't point over here now. You point over here at some other memory address, and I'll take your values, and I'll pop them in one at a time. Okay, going one at a time. You all right so far? Okay, now let me show you. Let's do... I'll make another project. Why not? Not undo. Not undo. File, new project. No, not undo. Why do I keep typing new project? My mouse is slipping. This is chapter 7. Let's talk about array lists. So ArrayList is a type built into the Java library, part of the Java API, because the fine folks at Java know that arrays are annoying because you can't resize them. Now, the syntax is a little bit funny, but you'll get used to it. It's okay. So an array list is an array list, and then a greater than less than sign. These are called braces. And in here, you have to tell it what type of object you're going to store. So instead of square braces, we say array list, and we'll say, and now you can't say int. So int is not allowed here because it's a primitive type. Array lists can only hold reference types, which is a bummer, but that's okay because remember, Java gives you these wrappers here. So an integer is a wrapper around the int type. So I can have an array list of integers called scores equals a new array list of type integer, or they just let you use braces, empty braces here, and then it's parentheses because this is a method call. This is a constructor. So can't use primitive types, use the wrappers. I can't spell. Primitive types. You have to use the wrappers. So it's type of here for those braces. Okay. What's cool though is array lists can get bigger and smaller. You can add to it and you can take away from it here. So I can just do a quick little loop here, and I'll say, I don't know, how about enter a score or -1 to stop. And I'll say, I'll have a int score is equal to keyboard dot, or integer dot parse int of keyboard dot next line. Oh, we need a keyboard here, sorry. Scanner keyboard, a scanner object, not a keyboard. There's a new scanner given system.in. Oh yeah, we got an import here. So it's going to say, hey, I don't know what an array list is. Yeah, import java.util.arraylists. Java.util.scanner. Look at that. Integer. There we go. Thank you, Yulenkaw. That's why it was still red. Okay, so I'll get an individual score, and I'm going to say while score does not equal -1, let's keep on going. I'm going to take my scores array list, and there's a dot method. So dot gives me all the things. So there's an add method. An add will add an element to the end of the list. So we're going to add score. Perfect. And then I'm going to prompt them again. So I'm going to say enter a score, -1 to stop. If they enter a -1, I'll come back to while loop and I'll stop. So I feel bad I had the prompt twice, but that lets me prompt at the end instead of inside the loop asking enter a value or -1, because then I have to say if it's not -1, then I can add it to the score. Right? The two ways of doing that loop here. Otherwise, you'd have to say enter a value, get it, and if score does not equal -1, then I can add the score. Right? These two loops do the same thing. So either you have to set it to something, right? So score would need a value that's not -1 to start. Right? I mean, we always have to say score equals 0, right? Or something. And then that way the loop will start, enter a score, give the score. If it's not -1, add it, then come back to the top. Well, if it is -1, stop. If it's not -1, ask them again. So either loop is perfectly fine. Right? Does that make sense? You just either you prompt at the beginning and then loop while it's not and reset at the end, or you have to check before you add it. Either way. Both loops will do the same thing here. Okay? So we can just add. You don't need to size it. This add will just add to the end, and you can get it bigger and bigger. It'll automatically resize itself. So array lists are fantastic because they resize themselves. You can remove from it. There's all sorts of cool methods in array lists. So if I check scores dot, there's all sorts of cool things I can do. You can clone it. You can make a new one of it, right? You don't even have to write your own copy, which is nice. Oh, a shallow copy. Maybe that's not what you want, but that's okay. You can ask, hey, does it contain? Does it have a value in it? You can get the index of a given value. You can say, hey, tell me what is the index of, say, value of 10. Do you have a value 10 there? If it doesn't exist, you get -1 back. You can remove an item. You can remove something at a given index. You can replace. You can get the size. So it doesn't have a length property. It has a size method that you use. You can turn it into an array, which is pretty cool. So lots of cool stuff you can do with array lists. I'm very partial to array lists because I think it's easier that you can resize them. So I will try and always use array lists if I can help it. To get a given value, you don't use the square braces, use a get method. It's a get index. So to do all those same things we did with methods here, or with arrays here, let's do that. We'll repeat all this with array lists. So instead of being an int of values, it's an integer, a array list of type integer. Values. Array list of type integer values. Array list of type integer values. Now, of course, it's upset because I can't use that square brace notation. I have to say get 0. I'd say get index. Get index. There's no length there. I'm sorry, that's size. There we go. What? I'm very confused here. Sorry, we'll just keep going for a second. What is vice versa? I'm sorry, I missed that. What is an instance where an array would be preferable to an array list? So array lists technically take up a little bit more space in memory. So if you are wanting to be as efficient as possible, an array is more efficient. Oh my goodness, I can't spell. Thank you. Integer. Goodness. Man, spelling is not the thing I'm good at. But that's okay. You don't have to be. Integer. Man, I copy-pasted the wrong thing here. Nice. Size. Now, the enhanced for loop still works. Look at that. You don't have to change anything in the enhanced for loop. Another reason these are amazing. This little functional operator, don't worry about it here. It's funky looking. And it just, I mean, it's okay. It's perfectly fine, but it's just weird. So don't worry about it. Okay, so we can do the exact same things here then. So then we'll do highest, lowest that we did before. We go and get average as well. Oh, no, I already found average. That's right. Those were able to run. All right, so let's enter some scores. So we had 12 and 45 and 62 and 15 and 86 and -1 to stop. It's asking again because I have it in here twice. So I'm just going to do -1 again. The highest is 86, lowest is 12, average is 44. Oh, I did the numbers wrong, didn't I? Probably is 44. That is why computers have spell check and predictive text. That's right. Because we made computers to help us poor little humans. Yeah, we're bad at stuff like that. Okay? How are you feeling so far? So again, essentially the same thing, arrays and array lists, but array lists are resizable, and because they are a class, you can do cool things with them with like dot. Remember when we had our array, like scores dot, the only really thing you could do with scores is get the length. That's the only really cool thing you could do with an array. With an array list, though, you have scores dot dot, and you get all sorts of cool things. Right? We can do all of these. If you want to get the index of something, we could write a method that would do that given an array. Would loop through the array, give me the index out, that sort of thing. But why reinvent the wheel, right? If Arraylist already knows how to do it, let's not have to repeat the wheel for array. Java API arrays. And there's this arrays class here. We want version 8. Should be fine. This is that arrays class. Remember, it did a bunch of cool things. Arrays copy, arrays equal, fill. You can fill an array. You can sort an array into ascending order, which is super cool. Tostring. You can take an array to tostring. So there's some cool things we can do. What is index of Arraylist? It's the same thing. So, but you have to use the get method instead of the square brace indexes. So it's still an index, but you use get instead of square braces for Arraylist because it's an object. So you use methods. You can even have arrays of classes if you want, which is really fun. So back in our chapter 6 classes here, right, I could make an array, student array. Call this my class, or I don't know, students. Why not students? Equals new student array of size, I don't know, 10, whatever. Right? And you can have it 10 instances of an object in an array, which is really cool. And that's the next powerful thing. We're not going to do a whole lot with that, though. We'll get more into that in the next class. 2151. You'll do more with arrays and things. All right, so how you folks feeling? We're doing all right? Again, please read the textbook. I can't encourage you enough to read the textbook. That is your main reference. I'm trying to give you the highlights, the Cliff Notes version here, give you some other examples, fun sorts of things to play with, and I'm here to help explain things to you that don't make sense. But if you're not reading the textbook, you're going to have a hard time, right? Because that's the additional work we're putting into it, in addition to working on our homework assignments and things and the quizzes. Okay, we should have a quiz tonight if I didn't screw up, but it's quite possible I did that here. Make sure there's a quiz. Discard changes? No. Save changes. Whatever. I think I fixed kilowatt, right? Probably have to save that. Is there a quiz for Chapter 6? Yes, there is. That's due tonight, 11:59 p.m. Oh my goodness, I'm back to Chapter 2. I have so many quizzes to grade. This has been the weirdest summer. I'm sorry, folks. I'll post the Chapter 7 quiz shortly. And again, I'll get all those graded well before the week before the midterm for you by July 5th. Make sure I'm all caught back up to date so you can use those to study for. Okay. Study group this week. Are they not in here? Why are they not in here? I broke my calendar. There's a study group every week. Wednesday, 5 p.m. With our amazing Mr. Tim. And I think that's all I've got for you. Remember, we're not meeting next week. Happy 5th of July, 4th of July, sure. If you have questions, thoughts, concerns, I'm happy to meet that time. I'll have my regular office hours if you folks want. No big deal, because it's not actually the 4th of July. And then we have the midterm on 7/12. It'll open up about midnight or so. I'm going to set the timer, so it should open right at midnight. Anytime before 11:59 p.m., you get to click the start button. Once you click start, you have 4 hours to click submit. It is unlike the regular chapter quizzes that you can open up, come back to anytime you want. Okay? So it is a timed exam. And then the next time I will see you then, I'll be live on the 19th. So I'm not going to do anything on the 12th. That time is totally for you. Oh, kitty fell asleep in my lap. You sleeping? He is. All right, friends. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Aside from me being slow grading things, my apologies. I'll be getting caught back up shortly. Get a picture of him here. Look at that. Java puts my cat to sleep. See the sweet little face there? Java is so boring, it puts my cats to sleep. Yeah, definitely. Happy to answer questions about Project 3. Again, I'd definitely like you to get that done before the midterm, so you've had that practice to write the class, like we did for the practice midterm here. I might ask you some sets and get methods, and maybe one interesting method here. So I'll say, hey, with that attributes, like private attributes for things, public methods, that sort of thing. we'll have a question about classes. We'll have a question about loops and files, a question about a method, and a question about a class. Those are your 3 short answer style questions, or long answer style questions. I don't know why I keep saying short. Okay? All right, awesome. So it's been fun. I will see you in 3 weeks then. Right? 1, 2, 3 weeks from tonight. Folks, take care. Keep in touch. Drop by my office hours. Ask me anytime. Find me on Discord. Text me. Email me. Any way that you prefer. And we'll get in touch. Again, I'm here to help you learn the material. Arraylist, no code. Yeah, no long answer questions on arrays or Arraylist for the midterm. Yep. You might get quiz questions about arrays and array lists, like the quiz, like short answer style questions, but no long coding ones. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Let's go find somebody else on Twitch to raid here for fun. Let me put on my ending screen here so the screen capture isn't going, and then it usually loads a lot better. All right. Rob's away. We got chess or paleontologizing. I think, yeah, Rob says he's away, so he's probably not doing anything interesting. Or someone playing Fortnite. Ooh, Neuro's playing StarCraft. Got StarCraft 2. Go check out some dinosaurs. Oh, I can't type his name here. My goodness. Paleontologizing is hard to spell. Let's be honest. All right, folks. I'll see you on the other side. Take care. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.